Hey guys, I have a friend named Steve Genewick who works at Capitol Studios in Hollywood. He's recorded everyone from Aerosmith to Queen, Tony Bennett, Diana Krall, Ray Charles, Paul McCartney, Sting, you name it, he's recorded it, and that was just this past week. He's also an active member and MixCoach member, and he's also recorded one of my personal favorite records that I've listened to pretty much nonstop thanks to my wife and my little girl Kaylin, the Michael Buble Christmas record. I think that this record is going to be a classic that we listen to generations from now. It's that good. Well, I sat down with Steve the other day and I asked him every question I could think of, like how the project was tracked, what kind of mics he used, what kind of mic pre's he used, compressors, how he set up the room mics, how long it took to mix, and even is Michael Bublé as cool as he seems to be? And the answer's all in the interview. Steve answered every question with astounding detail. Now, normally I only include interviews like this to my members at MixCoach Member. But in the spirit of Christmas, I decided to just let everyone see it, and I hope you guys like this type of interview. I know I enjoyed talking to him, and also I hope you have a Merry Christmas. I'm very thankful for all of my viewers, all of my subscribers, and I'm very, very grateful for your time and attention. Have a Merry Christmas and enjoy the interview. First of all, thank you for taking some time with me today. I know you've got a tight schedule today, but do you mind if I ask you some questions about the Michael Bublé record? I know that you and I were talking one time, and you said that, and from what I've read, that record was mostly recorded live in the studio. Is that right?
That's true. Yeah, almost all recorded live in the studio. At least, certainly the basic tracks. It's my involvement in the record is I had two parts. I was an engineer for all the Bob Rock produced tracks, as far as I recorded the orchestral and the big band side of it. It's actually kind of an interesting story. Bob, who's a great engineer in his own right, let me go back. At Capitol, we have two rooms, Studio A and Studio B. They sit right next to each other. The wall between them opens up, so we can actually get a big orchestra in there. But it is two separate rooms. Well, Bob wanted to record the rhythm section in Studio B on the old Neve console. But Bob doesn't record orchestral and big band stuff. He just does. It's not what he does, and he knew I did. So what we did is we actually split the two rooms up. And Bob set up the rhythm section in Studio B like he would for a regular album, running into the Studio B console on the 8068. Well, I recorded in Studio A the big band and the strings like I normally would on the console and the VR in Studio A. Completely separate control rooms. But as far as the orchestra and the band were concerned, they were all playing together. They were playing at the same time and all that. We actually locked two Pro Tools rigs together. So when they hit go in Studio B, my Pro Tools in Studio A rolled. And then we blended the two Pro Tools sessions together after the fact. So it was kind of a separate but equal thing. It was really quite interesting. It took us a long time to set up and figure out how to do it. But as far as everybody involved, except for the two control rooms, was concerned, we were all recording in one place at one time. We sent stems back and forth so everybody had proper headphones and all that kind of stuff. But in a sense, it was actually two separate recordings happening simultaneously that then got put together into a lot of tracks. It was probably 80 tracks once we were done.
Wow.
It was really fun, actually.
So you
Except
had
being there at 5 o'clock in the morning to set up.
I'll bet. Yeah, I don't guess in a studio like Capitol you get the luxury of coming in the day before and setting up. It's pretty. You probably have a big session in there the day before too.
Yeah, usually we have great staff, great setup guys. They usually set the rooms up at night while we're not there. But because, like you said, for that session we would have made sure that we had at least a good part of the night time to do it. But when I walked in the morning, the studio would have been set up already. The microphones, the chairs, the lights, the mics, music stands, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. We had to set up the control rooms ourselves.
Okay. So you had rhythm section. I guess you had a 4 or 5 piece band in B, and then you had like a 30, 40 piece orchestra in the A room, or was it that big?
Yeah, we started off with full big band. I remember that, the first session. So that would have been 5 saxes, 4 trumpets, 4 trombones. And the strings were probably about 20 strings, maybe 30 strings. And I kind of set them up with the big band in the front of the room facing into Studio B so they could see, again, the wall was open. So as far as they were concerned, they were in the same room.
Yeah.
So the big band would have been blowing towards Studio B with the saxes on the left and the bones on the right and the trumpets kind of on a riser behind them in like a V shape like we normally do. And the strings, I set up, put a row of flats behind them and the strings behind them. Otherwise, we never would have heard the strings. If the big band's blowing into the strings, yeah, they don't have a chance.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was basically the setup. And then in Studio B, they just had a basic rhythm section. It was Jim Keltner and Paul Bushnell and Lyle Workman, I think. I think Josh Freese came in and played on some stuff. It kind of mutated. We did like 2 days of this, and it kind of mutated the rhythm section a little bit. And, some songs had less big band, some songs had more strings, stuff like that. At one point, I think the last thing we did is we did a more of a jazz type record. I'm trying to remember which song. The problem is I don't remember which. I worked on so much of the record, they all kind of blend together. But we did one with just strings and jazz brushes and upright bass and that kind of stuff. And that was the last thing we did. And I remember we took a dinner break and we set the room up with the strings and the jazz band, and we set that all up in Studio A because, again, Bob was like, this is what you do, just do it. And we set it all up and we did the first rundown, and Michael was singing live in the room, actually in the studio without headphones. We actually set speakers up so he could sing live. And but he wanted to hear the band, and we did the first run through, and Michael went, I'm just not feeling it. I need the band. I need the rhythm section closer to me. So we actually stopped the whole session, took the entire rhythm section up, moved them to the other side of the room next to Michael, and it was all hands on deck. I'll never forget looking up and seeing Bob Rock and Michael Buble lifting gobos over cables to move them around. But we needed to get it done, and both of them are those kind of guys. Michael was willing to help. He wanted to do whatever he had to do. So he was out there moving cables and pushing mics and moving gobos and all that kind of stuff. It was quite fun, actually.
I have a new respect for him. So he's not a diva kind of a guy in the studio. It seems like a guy we could go to lunch with, right?
I've had many drinks with Michael Buble. He is the nicest guy in the world. Yeah. He's really one of my favorite people.
Yeah,
he's a great
I can imagine. The longer I hear his music, the more and more I love that style. It's timeless, It's not trendy. So I mean, in other words, you're not inundated with the newest keyboard sounds and the newest drum sounds. It's all classic recordings. So it'll be around in 50 years when people are listening to classic Christmas records. You will have been a part of another classic Christmas record.
I hope so. That was kind of the point of that record too. Everybody went into it saying we need to make this record so it'll last forever. So it was that was talked about before anything ever started on both sides. I mean, that came from Michael. So that was put to Bob Rock and David Foster and Umberto, the 3 producers on the record, because they actually worked separate from each other. The funny part was they all worked at Capitol. So we did all these separate things. I ended up working on almost the entire album, which was funny. I think besides Michael, I was the one who worked on more songs than anybody.
Yeah. Well, the stuff that you recorded with Al Schmitt, now he recorded, I think, the first 4 songs on the record, right?
He recorded all the David Foster tracks. So he recorded most of the record. I think he only mixed 4 songs.
Okay, and did you help him mix the 4 songs?
Yes.
Okay.
He mixed, I think, 4 songs that I recorded. I know at least 2 or 3 of them were songs that I recorded, which is kind of weird because that's like handing in your homework,
I can imagine.
I've been working with Al for such a long time that whenever he mixes something that I record, I always sit in the back of the room nervous, like, oh God, here it comes. What's he gonna say?
Yeah. And I think from our last interview on the membership website, I think we had talked about the pace at which that he mixes those songs. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a pretty quick pace for that kind of music, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It only takes him a few hours to mix something like that. And on this record, there was one arrangement. I think it's Blue Christmas, which was a really thick arrangement. That one took a while to do. And to be quite honest with you, I want to say that mix that we did not get used on the record. I have a feeling that I believe Buble Christmas is the one where they actually used an old rough mix that everybody liked.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, after a couple of people mixed it, everybody was trying to beat the rough mix kind of thing. And Al's probably sounded better sonically, but there was just a vibe about that rough mix that Michael really liked, and I think that's what got used.
Well, okay, tell me about that. That's an interesting thing, because rough mixes to some people are, a static mix on the board after the session. It takes maybe a pass or two. Mm-hmm. And then there are rough mixes that, some would consider what I would consider a big mix, like you would take several hours to do a mix. Now, when you say rough mix, a good rough mix, which mix was that then? Was it a one or two passes or?
Now that was a Bob Rock mix. I have a feeling just from talking to people, because I wasn't there for it, I think that was a mix that maybe they spent an hour on, because it was a mix that, like, okay, well, let's get a good rough so we can play it for the record company people, and if anybody wants to listen to it. But I doubt they took much more. If they spent an hour on it, it'd be
wow.
Amazing. Especially on a record like that. Again, that record was recorded live. So the way that we record it, when I record a big band and orchestra, stuff like that, I've got a chart in front of me. I'm watching it go down. We've done it a couple of times. I'm writing gain as we go. So, and I know Bob does the same thing, and certainly Al does the same thing because he taught me. So a lot of it is mixed in the recording process. Because it's live, I mean, you put up a static mix of those songs, you're going to have the dynamics and all that kind of stuff. So,
right.
So it's much easier to mix.
So, okay, I keep going down this rabbit hole of questions for you for this.
It's okay.
But I really love this project. So, if you're recording it live and you're kind of mixing as you go, that pretty much means that you track it all on that big Neve console, right? And you use the faders to go to tape and everything.
Absolutely.
So do you use the small faders on the top to go to tape or the bottom faders?
I use the bottom faders to go to tape because I can group them in the automation and I can ride them. So if I'm riding gain, I'm riding gain to tape. So if there's, a spot where a solo comes up, I grab the fader and push it up and balance it as it goes. So then when you play back, it's already done.
I love that. That gets me excited, man. I love to hear that.
And do the same thing with the vocal. You kind of learn the song as you record a vocal, and you're writing gain on the vocal so that obviously you're going to go back and do some writing, but, you learn where, okay, Michael's going to get loud at this spot, so pull it back a little bit and try to keep it, in the ballpark. Again, that's stuff I've learned from guys like Al Schmidt working with, engineers who, when they started, they had to do that.
Right.
So, but it sure makes mixing a lot easier.
Wow. Okay, well, I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to come back out of the rabbit hole a little bit because I'm hoping to ask you about some more of this stuff, a little later on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I saw something like this on the on another YouTube channel, and his name slipped me right now. But it's basically where I would give you an instrument, and you'd tell me kind of signal path-ish sort of thing. Do you mind if on the big band stuff, if I gave you an instrument, you could maybe tell me the microphone, and I know for the most part you're using the Neve, the mic pre's, right, on the Neve console.
Yeah, on that project, actually, I did bring in. Al Schmidt has a ton of outboard mic preamps, and we have a bunch at the studio. And on that project, I think I brought in a bunch of outboard mic pre's also. Okay. We have since changed the console in there. We now have a brand new Neve, and those mic pre's sound great.
That's the 88R, right?
It's the 88R,
yeah. Well, so let me ask you. Let me just run down the session, and maybe you can tell me kind of what you did. Now I think you did tell me this, that on Michael you used the U48, the U48 that you call Frank, right? That's Frank Sinatra's old microphone with the Capitol Records sticker on it.
Yep.
And I think you went through the Neve mic pre through a Summit.
We went through that would have been like a 1073 mic pre, an old Neve mic pre,
Yeah.
through a Summit TLA 100.
Yeah. Which was surprising to me, but you said it's a workhorse, right?
Use them for almost everything.
Yeah. Okay, before we move to the quick fire stuff, how much, when he would really get into the microphone, and I know he plays the microphone like an instrument,
Right.
how much compression were you, how much were you knocking down on him?
Maybe 3 dB.
Really?
Tops. Yeah.
That's all. But you can dig
But again,
in.
we got the fader.
Uh-huh. So you're compressing after the fader then, right?
No, compressor's on the insert, but when he gets loud, instead of it compressing, we just pull the gain down going to tape, or in this case, to Pro Tools.
Okay. Okay.
So we're riding gain as we go.
Okay. Okay, here's the quick fire thing.
Okay.
The piano.
A pair of M149s over the hammers. With those would have been probably Neve preamps.
Okay, and when you say Neve, you're talking about onboard or 1073-ish?
Those would have been outboard Neve. Yeah, 31105s, I think, the ones out of the old 8068 console.
Okay. Was that, I know you've got two pianos there, was that the old Steinway or the Yamaha?
On that record, it was the Yamaha, 9-foot Yamaha.
I wonder why you chose that over the...
It's a little bit brighter, and it cuts through a big band a little bit better.
To have two pianos to choose from must be nice.
Yeah, we have a great old Steinway that was Nat King Cole's piano. It's the one that they had at the old studio. It's a great, really warm piano. But the big one really zings through stuff. So
yeah. Okay, so drums, the drum kit.
Drum kit. Well, for the jazz stuff I did, it would have been a D112 on the kick, probably. 452 or a condenser on the top of the snare, maybe a 57 underneath if he hit it with brushes. We don't use that. 452s for overheads and hi-hat, 414s on the toms.
Okay. Acoustic bass guitar.
Pair of M149s.
And where were they placed?
One kind of in front of the F hole to the player's left, and one kind of where the bridge meets the instrument to the player's right, so above the F hole.
Do you ever have any phasing problems with that?
You can get it right as long as you get the placement right. It's usually pretty good. Make sure they're lined up.
Okay.
And that's one I learned from Al again. When he got his 149s, he kind of came up with that, and it just sounds phenomenal. Those would have gone through Summits with maybe a dB or two of compression.
Now, the 149s over the piano and the bass,
yep,
those are new mics, right?
Those are fairly new mics within the last 10 years, yeah.
Okay. Hey, I was just automatically, I used a M49 the other day. That's the big old, they look the same, it's just a newer version of it, right?
Yeah, they don't really sound the same, though. The 149s are a bit brighter, which works really well for the piano and for the bass. Believe it or not, I mean, I tend to use brighter mics on a bass, because especially acoustic bass, you want the resiny, you want to hear all the finger stuff and all that kind of stuff. And that's one thing Bob Rock said immediately, going into it. He said, I want that big, fat, resiny, I want to hear the body of the bass. I said, okay, no problem. And I put those mics up and pushed it up, and he literally went, yep, that's the sound I want. And he walked out. That was the end of it. That was all the that was all the criticism he had.
So the 149s through vintage Neves. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. Now, what about archtop?
The guitar would have been probably an AKG 460, kind of mic'd down near the F hole, the bottom F hole of the guitar. And that would have gone through either a Neve or maybe a Great River. Al has a few of those. Might use that. And that's it.
Okay. Electric guitar?
57 or a Royer right in front of the amp.
Okay.
For the archtop stuff, the jazz stuff, we probably blended the two. I know with Graham Dector, who played a lot of the jazz stuff on that record, who I do his records too. And we use a combination of the guitar just for kind of the clinky stuff and blend the amp in. And on his records, I use a Royer and a 57. I just put them right next to each other and put them up in front of the amp and get a blend that way. I don't have to EQ it that way.
No, that's cool. Okay, so let's talk about the big band. Okay. Trumpets.
Trumpets, U67s in Omni.
One U67 in Omni?
No, one for each one.
Okay, and how many are there? 4?
4. Yeah.
Okay, saxes.
67s.
Omni.
Not on this record, but it's not unusual.
Okay. So saxes, U67, one per sax player?
Yes.
Okay, and they're what, just about maybe a foot away from each player?
Maybe 2 feet.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And then
Same with the saxes. They're probably a couple feet back. Or the trumpets. They're a couple feet back.
okay, and they're playing straight into it, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. What about the bones?
Trombones would have been Royer. We have a bunch of the Royer 122Vs, the tube powered ribbons.
Yeah.
They sound great.
Okay.
And then, most importantly, a pair of M50s in the room.
Okay. Those are old now, right?
Yeah, those are old.
Okay, are they XY or?
No, they're a spaced pair.
Okay.
And they're fixed Omni. So
Okay. Okay.
they sound amazing.
You've got an awesome mic collection there. What am I missing?
Strings.
Strings. Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. U67s all the way across. Well, cellos probably on that record. I believe I used U48s for the cellos,
For the
but
cello.
67s for the violins and the violas.
Okay, so I don't know if you mic strings like I do. It was 167 over the whole first violins, and then another one over the second violins.
It would have been probably because I didn't have a huge violin section on that. One over the first, one over the seconds, one over the violas, and then one per pair for each cello.
Okay.
And then we did get bigger on the bigger jazz thing that we did. We had a much bigger string section, and I probably would have used two mics over the first, 2 mics over the second, a couple over the viola.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And in that situation, I would have put them in Omni when it was just strings in the room.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, all this stuff is what I learned from Al.
Yeah.
And other people. You steal from the best.
Yeah, that's what art is, right? Forgetting where you learned it.
Exactly.
Okay, so and I'm sure you had so strings and the brass were all coming through the M50s, right?
For the most part, yeah.
For the room mics, and how do you have those? How do you have those set up? I mean, are they just I can't even picture the room right now. Where would they have been placed?
Kind of over the conductor's head.
Where was the conductor standing?
Conductor would have been kind of in between the two rooms, so he could see both ways.
Okay.
He would have been facing it because the way we do it in that room. He would have had the big band and the strings on this side of him, and the rhythm section on this side.
Okay.
So he kind of sits with stuff to his left and right,
right,
rather than a traditional having it all in front of him.
Okay.
If it's just one room, we turn it, and he has everybody in front of him.
Okay. And that's where Michael was standing right beside the conductor, correct?
Yeah. Michael was actually right in front of the conductor, so he was looking at the conductor.
Okay. So, and you said he didn't wear headphones? He wore just had a couple of
Genewick speakers in front of him.
Wow. And did you have a bunch of gobos up, separating things?
We started that way, but he didn't like them.
Huh.
So, because he would actually... He didn't have the speakers up very loud. He was hearing a lot of the stuff in the room.
Mm-hmm.
So,
which I'm sure is inspiring to sing to.
Yeah, and it certainly makes mixing a lot easier because when he did crank those speakers up, then you start hearing stuff come back at you and
right.
Get a little more ambience than you used to.
Okay. What about if you are automating faders going to tape?
Mm-hmm.
Then there has to be a click track involved, right? Or
I wouldn't be automating the faders to tape. I'm just writing the gain. I'm using the automation just to group faders together.
Okay, I'm with you. I understand now. Okay, because
I don't think we used a click on much of this record. Mostly just the conductor.
Yeah. Oh, this is really cool information, man.
Don't forget, the most important part of all this, the arrangers.
Mm-hmm.
And the arrangers did such a good job. So, I mean, that's where most of it comes from, really. I mean, if the arrangements are right, I mean, the musicians are stellar. They were all the LA studio guys. But really, it's the arrangers that make it sound great. And we had great arrangers on this record.
Now, the arrangers, because I'm interested in that kind of stuff too, have they never heard their arrangements until the day they went in the studio? Do they do pre-production on this kind of stuff? I mean, were they adjusting on the fly? Like, you need to sing a C sharp or play a C sharp instead of a
It
D?
depends. It depends on who it is. Some of the guys will mock up synth type arrangements beforehand. Some of them don't. I don't know how much of that got done on this record. Obviously, they would have sat down with Michael and either David or Bob, the producers, and kind of run through how how the song is going to go.
Mm-hmm.
But actually hearing the full arrangement, I'm sure most of them heard it for the first time that first run through.
Okay. Okay, let me ask one more question, Steve, and then I'm going to ask you a bunch more.
Okay, we got time. Don't worry.
Okay. What do you do about phase issues with that many mics in a room? Do the guys that set up the mics, do they have a clicker or something that makes sure that everything's in phase with each other?
Yes, absolutely. Every session we do we phase pop every single mic, so at least we're electronically in phase. As far as phase in the room, you just go for it. There's so many mics up there, there's no way to go through and really check, between this mic and that mic and that mic and this mic. And the phase shifts are probably part of the sound of it too. Yeah. Now, obviously, for stuff like drums and bass, anything that's got close mics, blending the guitar mics, stuff like that. Yeah, we're always checking phase.
Yeah.
As the guy warms up or whatever, you run out and you start hitting phase buttons to make sure you're okay.
Yeah.
But as far as the orchestral stuff, you just kind of go for it.
Well,
but yes, everything is electronically in phase.
I'm sorry, what?
Everything is electronically in phase.
Yeah. Yeah. That is one thing that I've noticed about anything that comes out of that room or those rooms in Capitol. They have a sound. Back to the Sinatra days, the "Come Fly With Me" arrangement, and I think maybe even Bublé or somebody did that same arrangement in that room again, and it has that. There's a Capitol sound about everything. So you're
Absolutely.
right. The whole phase and the room sound, all that plays into the
chambers.
Huh?
The chambers.
Oh,
the
yeah.
echo.
Oh, yeah. And I heard something the other day. It was a Dean Martin record. He recorded at Capitol too, right?
Absolutely.
And somebody was just wearing out one of those chambers.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was. They must have just gotten them.
Yeah.
Because
They've been there since the beginning, since they built the building.
I'm sorry?
Since they built the building.
Yeah.
It was the only reverb they had in 1956.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're great.
Okay, one more question. My little girl's favorite song is Jingle Bells.
Okay.
And so that you tracked all that stuff. Did the Papini sisters? They were kind of they went for an old Bing Crosby and Andrews sisters arrangement on that song, and there's a lot of similarities and there's a lot of things that are brand new too. But did the Papini sisters sing at the same time Michael did, or did they overdub?
They overdubbed.
But did Michael record his part with the band at that point too?
Michael sang live with the band. I'm trying to remember. That was a David Foster produced track, and I believe Chris Walden did the arrangement. And Michael recorded live with the band, and then the Papini sisters came in and sang a couple of days later. I think they were out of town. They weren't available the day we were recording. But as I remember, now when they did the Papini sisters, I was actually across the hall working. I didn't actually work on the vocal session for that. Al and I were mixing across the hall, but I remember going in and hanging out a little bit. And I believe they all sang around one mic.
I saw a YouTube video that I'm going to put under the show notes of this post, and it looks like there's a couple of UCC7 set up XY, and they're singing around those.
Yeah, that's possible.
And Michael was in the room, and I think that he had a U48, the U48 set up too, but it looked like they were overdubbing separately, and I didn't know if they did that for video or if that was the real case.
He might have sung that with them again. He might have overdubbed his part and done it along with them. Certainly the kind of back and forth stuff that they do, he would have done live with them. So yeah, now that I'm remembering, Michael did have his vocal set up in that.
So then they would have had to do a pass without Michael singing at all too then, right?
Yes.
Or, because I didn't hear any bleed.
Or he just sang very well right on top of his old vocal.
Is he that good?
Yeah, he could.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm sitting here looking at I think we've covered about all my all my questions. I was going to ask you this: White Christmas. There's a vintage sounding, sounds like a Fairfield Ford type of background vocalist on there, and the bass singer at the very beginning of the song goes do 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 do.
Right.
It sounds kind of lo-fi. Is that just his voice, or did I think Bob Rock did that, didn't he?
Oh, that was a David Foster track.
Was it?
Yeah. Because I remember those vocals came in. I remember I don't know that they. I think that's his voice. I don't remember that they did anything funny on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know those vocals got done a couple of times. Like they did them, and then it wasn't quite what they wanted, so they brought the guys back and did them again.
Okay.
But I think that's all live.
Did they
record
live? They recorded that live background vocals with the orchestra too then?
No.
Okay.
The background vocals were put on after.
Okay. So, okay, gotcha. Yeah, there wouldn't have been room for all that, would there?
Yeah, that would have been going a little too far.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you know what? That's a lot of my questions here. So, thank you for taking time. I know you got a time. Hey guys, if you like interviews like this, and if you like hanging out with people like Steve and being able to bounce questions off of them every now and then, check out MixCoach Member. MixCoach Member has hundreds of members, guys like Steve and guys like me who are learning, and then there are guys who are just getting started. So I think you can find what you need at MixCoach Member. So come check us out. Thanks again, Steve, for taking the time to let me bounce a million questions off of you.
No, not a problem.
All right. Merry Christmas.
Same to you. Merry Christmas.